we'll perform this exercise of installing the ingress on the vanilla Kubernetes. Again, I got the details from nginx ingress website. Okay, so before running this command, let's do the cleanup first. kubectl get all, or I think we can continue without cleanup as well. So what I'm doing is I'm installing now ingress. So this ingress installation we have to do even on the cloud as well. Okay, so cloud, like micro characters, the cloud doesn't have an add-on. Maybe cloud will be in future they may be having, or it will be available as a marketplace. Okay, but there also we need to install the ingress. So kubectl -n ingress nginx get all, it creates this namespace. Okay, and if you see, one of the container is getting created, and by default it will have an service called node port. Okay, so the ingress service is listening on the node port. Okay, but we need to make it run on load balancer. So in this case it will take the load balancer IP address from metal lb. So let's wait for it to get completed. Okay, it's still creating the container. So if you do only check the service, okay, so as I mentioned, it is ingress controller is using node port. Okay, we need to make it load balancer. When we make it load balancer, this ingress itself will have the load balancer IP. So whenever we create any ingress, okay, ingress configuration, the request will come to this public IP first, and based on the rules which we have defined in ingress, okay, it will be routed to the internal services. Okay, so completed and running. So our ingress is installed. Now just we need to add a load balancer to it. So for that, what we'll have to do is we'll have to define a service. Okay, so what I have done here is I've used an imperative command. Okay, so here it is. Okay, we can see the ingress is running on node port by default. Let's make it running on a load balancer using this imperative command. We can also use some declarative, but in this case we are using an imperative command. kubectl get svc, it's running on node port. Okay, so what we are saying is we are just patching the service. Okay, this service that make it run, that is in ingress nginx, check for ingress controller. Okay, this is the ingress controller, and make its type as load balancer. That's it, simple. Now it's patched, and now we can see service. So it got an external IP address 1.132 and got it from metal lb. Okay, that's why we install metal lb first, and then we are installing ingress. Okay, now we'll create some rules. Okay, will create some deployment and ingress rules, and this also we are creating using some script and imperative commands. Okay, so just copy this deployment.sh file, cat deploy.sh. So don't worry about the commands documentation is available on the internet. Okay, so you can easily get the commands. The sequence and the logic is important. So I'll explain it. This is the imperative command to create the deployment. HTTPD deployment one is the name of the deployment. Then we are creating a cluster service IP. Okay. Then we are creating deployment number two, and again we are creating a cluster service IP. Okay. And then we are not using any load balancer, because if we keep using a load balancer, the number of IPs will keep on increasing. And if it is cloud, there will be multiple. If there are 10 applications, there will be 10 public IPs, and public IPs are costly. So what we are doing is we are just assigning the load balancer directly to the ingress. Okay. This will be the IP address, and whenever the request comes to this ingress load balancer, we have defined some rules. What are the rules? In this creating the ingress, we are getting ingress rule, named as web1 and web2. And rule is, whenever you get a request from web1.example.com, forward it to httpd cluster ip1, which we are creating here, httpd cluster ip1. And for the second one, it will be httpd cluster ip2, this one. Okay. So that's it, we are defining here in this ingress imperative command. So now just run it, cat deploy.sh, bash deploy.sh, and it started creating the deployment service and even the ingress rules. So there is some warning, but we can ignore it. Just do kubectl get all. Okay. So deployment 1 and deployment 2, that's what we created now. The above is created earlier. And if you see now, the cluster IP1 and cluster IP2, they are available internally, they are not available to the outside world. Okay. But if you do kubectl get ingress, okay, so it's still in progress, let's wait for it. So ingress is created. Till then what we will do is, we'll just make an entry in cat/etc hosts, so that web1 and web2 are properly resolved. So we'll make this entry in cat/etc host, and in this case also I got an IP address. So let's check. I got an IP address 1.132. So sudo vim/etc host web1 and web2 entry we have made. Now let's check if the ingress is ready. When the ingress is ready, it will show that it's running on 1.22, because both the pods, if you do kubectl get pods, okay, and just do -o wide, okay, we can see both the pods are running on node 2. All the pods are running on node 2. Okay. And one more thing, when we create such scenario, by default, nothing will be scheduled on the master node. It is not meant to be to act as a means worker node. Okay. Everything will be by default going to the worker nodes. That's why here it's saying that all the pods are running on node 2. If we have node 3, and if it is a worker node, then it will schedule there as well, but nothing on master node. And if you want to make it run on master node, we need to run some other commands. Okay. We need to untaint it. Okay. So the tainting is done, so we need to untaint it. Okay. But that's not so important, because master should not have the load. Its purpose is to schedule the pods as per the resources on the worker node. Okay. So if you see, our ingress is also ready now, and just do curl web1.example.com, it will give the response, and do curl web2.example.com, it will give the output. Now on Windows, we are not able to easily add the entry. So what we will do is, from other node we'll try to do curl. Okay. Because ingress makes it available on internet, but Can anybody tell me why it is not working, web 1 and web 2 from node 2? The answer is also given here in the error itself. And how to make it work on this node now?
You have to add that host name, right?
Cat etc host entity need to be added.
Yes, right. Okay, sudo vm/etc host. So I'll copy it quickly from here. And what? Suppose these are public IP addresses. Then what we need to do uh, in production environment? Suppose I'm launching my own website. Okay, www.prayag.com. Okay, and it has some IP address, public IP address. Then how we will access it? Means I'll try to access it www.prayag.com, but where I need to make the entry? Anybody knows that?
Resolve.nsf confa.
No, that will be all locally, but
Hmm,
every end user, there are means hundreds and thousands of users, they will be using my website, right?
correct.
So how that is done? Anybody knows? Suppose I'll suppose this is my website, right?
Yeah,
Learn with prayer.
DNS name must be resolved.
Yeah, for that, where we need to make the entry? Anybody? So recently I created this website. Okay,
Hmm,
learnwithprayak.com. Okay, see, so it's getting resolving.
correct.
How? Okay, so I'll give you a small tip. Okay, we never worked on it, so we don't know. Okay, so
Hmm,
what we need to do is, first we need to register this domain. Okay, there are various domain providers, and domain name providers over the internet. I think you must have heard about HostGator, Bluehost, and one of the famous is GoDaddy. Okay,
hmm, hmm.
get the host name, means the domain registered with the GoDaddy. And what GoDaddy will say, that uh, these are the name servers. They will give the name of the name servers: ns1 dot something dot com, dns.com, and ns2 dot dns, something like that. Okay, so suppose forget about this containers. Okay, suppose you have a website which you are hosting on AWS. Okay, so in AWS, what you did it is, you launched an VM, which will by default will have a some public IP address. Okay, so take that public IP address. Okay, suppose it is 1.1.1. Okay, and go to the DNS provider. Okay, so in that DNS provider, that is ns1 and ns2, they will be of the same DNS provider where your website is hosted. In this case, AWS DNS, that is route 53. Okay, and make an entry in the DNS configuration file. That is, you need to create a record. Okay, and then it will resolve properly. So this is how it is done in the production environment as well. Okay, so that's it for today, and that completes our, means everything practical related to